people walking around are so heavily armed.
Too many guns is the problem, say the media and politicians. But Maj Touré wants more guns.
Everybody should be walking around and like, oh man, I left my gun in the house. Let me go back and get it. It should be as normal as a cell phone.
Everybody?
Everybody.
Touré started a group called Black Guns Matter.
What we said was we're going to make this demographic be the new largest gun buying demographic in America.
His group runs firearms training classes.
We went around the country teaching every area. We went to every area that was violent crime and did classes. I said, hey, if you want to come learn about firearms, come on and learn. Come as you are.
I did a short video with Touré a while back, but he has other interesting things to say. And now that I know many of you actually like longer interviews, here's our full conversation, starting with his claim that all gun control is racist.
Why is gun control racist?
It was literally started to stop black people from having the means to defend themselves.
The colonies in the 1600s had rules against blacks owning guns, specifically.
Yeah. It's a good thing that America is rebel city. It's a good thing we don't like being told what human rights we have. Even though that contradiction was there, again, I'm American. You're not telling me any human rights that I don't have the right to defend. I'm an American. I go by the Constitution. It's not my rules, baby. Thomas Jefferson and the boys wrote this.
Well, Virginia declared it illegal for free blacks to carry any firelock.
All gun control is racist. That literally proves it.
There was less lynching where blacks owned guns.
Rapey McNapey, Hangy McNangy ain't doing it to black communities that's armed. All of the facts and the data are in favor of respect for the Second Amendment, especially in the black community.
It's still racist now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at the outcome. Let's take the state of California, right? Big state, big economy, a lot of taxes, but big state, big economy. It's a state-issued license, right? A license to carry. If you live in Oakland, if you live in Compton, if you live in Los Angeles in general county, right? The chances of you getting a license to carry, even though the Second Amendment is clear, right, is very little. But if you live in Brentwood, if you live in Orange County, if you live in Beverly Hills, the issue rate for that license to carry goes up. Which one of those areas is more predominantly black and brown people, and which one of those areas are predominantly white folks? Now, this is not to disparage our white brothers and sisters at all. It's to showcase that even though we're not still saying you blacks can't have guns, right? Because some state constitutions literally amended their constitution to say every able-bodied white man can have a firearm. Looking at you, North Carolina, right? So this is just to highlight there's a contradiction there. Black codes, slave codes. Now that it's a faux pas to say we don't want you blacks to have the gun now, the outcome is still the same. Who's arrested more for firearms possession? Black and brown folks. The outcome is still the same, even though the Second Amendment, which is the supreme law of the land, is very, very clear. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But this bigotry of low expectation to somehow think that black people, brown people, all people now at a certain point, don't have the means or shouldn't have the means, or government should be the only people with firearms, is just poppycock. It's false. It's not real. Especially when you factor in over 30 years of data that shows areas that have more safe and responsible gun owners, over the last 20 some odd years, as more licenses to carry have increased, there's been a decrease in violent crime. So the data's there, but the racism still exists. And I don't use that term racism loosely. Just because somebody's wearing a MAGA hat doesn't make them racist. That means you just don't like their hat or their politic. But when you're talking about the outcome being this group of people being disproportionately impacted by the racist practice of gun control, which is contradictory to the supreme law of these lands, the contradiction's clear.
And the Supreme Court just ruled that you don't need a special license. So why are people being asked for licenses?
Black Guns Matter is cited in that Supreme Court decision.
But you haven't really won because people Because they're still demanding licenses.
It's continuing to get overturned. And it didn't say that's a step in the right direction. Because I think all of the licenses are the government selling you your rights back to you. That's what licenses are. Now, if someone wants to get a license, absolutely. We'll show you how to get it in your city, your state. You know, our classes, again, are voluntary funded. You can come learn for free.
That's part of your training program.
Part of the training. But I'm also going to tell you that license is an infringement. It is, you know.
In this story, the author of We Will Shoot Back.
Great book.
The history of armed resistance predates armed nonviolence.
What does he mean?
The history of armed resistance predates our nonviolence. This nonviolent thing was a tactic by the great and honorable Dr. Martin Luther King. It was a tactic. Television was becoming a thing. His thought process was, he studied Gandhi, right? The thought process was, if legitimate, good white folks see what's happening to African Americans, like as television would show it on the news, they would go, nah, that's just wrong. This is where I can't all the way fully get with like, oh, every person that's insert whatever group is insert whatever thing. There were good white folks during that time that were like, that's wrong, bro. No different than Thomas Paine was like, nah, Thomas Jefferson, we can't write the Declaration of Independence and then own humans. It's a contradiction, right? When you see the history of the African American experience and using firearms to defend self, to defend ideals, we fought in every major war for this nation. Even during a time when, and I say we, I wasn't there, right? But, you know, lineage-wise, even when my elders and ancestors were not even looked upon as first-class citizens, we were looked at as denizens, right? We still fought for what we believed. So much so that, you know, Britain and those guys was like, yo, come fight for us, fight against America, and we'll give you your freedom. So our history, we have a rich tradition of firearms ownership and defending our values and our lives since our, you know, inception on these lands.
He says nonviolence would not have been able to operate without black people who were well armed.
100%. The South would have won in the Civil War, if not for black people. Like, let's be clear. The South would have won in the Civil War, if not for black men. That's not a diss. It's just the fact of the matter. It's just what it is. Everybody should read this. There's a magazine called The Black Chronicle, which chronicles newspaper clippings from like the way back, right? All the way up into like the 1980s. It's called The Black Chronicle. And there's actual articles in like a printout, it's about this thick, of all of those articles talking about those things from way back in the day. And we were fighting against the transatlantic slave trade, the MAFA, Jim Crow, black codes, slave codes. It wasn't about like, you know, if we lose, we're just gonna get a like slap on the wrist. No different than the founding fathers to this place, with their contradictions, right? If they would have lost, you're getting hung. The correlation between the desire for freedom in those spaces are very clear. And you wasn't gonna get that without physical violence. America was built on money and violence. I'm an American.
In the video, there's a woman.
I do not think that the Second Amendment is interpreted the same for Caucasians as it is for black gun owners.
Yeah, that's I mean, like, unless you really know what you're doing, right? And that's why training is very important. And unless you start to understand and utilize the Second Amendment as is, as opposed to how mainstream narratives may try to package it. And that doesn't just mean black folk. That means some law enforcement officers. We go back to, you know, the story of Philando Castile. Don't pull it out. And that guy wasn't white. Officer or ex-officer Yanez wasn't a white dude. He was Hispanic. The narrative that anyone with a firearm is a bad guy is a pervasive theme, especially if you are in an urban environment and if you happen to be black. If you don't articulate these things very well, it's very easy for corrupt portions or ignorant portions of law enforcement or other people to just think it's bad. When I'm in a
If you don't articulate it, if you don't say, yeah, I have a gun to protect Myself.
Boom. And now the reality is, this is where the double standard lies. And some people may not like that I'm going to say this. White folks don't got to articulate their position in the same way. Black people in America had to fight for civil rights. You have civil rights when your human rights have been denied, right? The fact that Black Guns Matter, our work exists, speaks to the problem. The job is to make my job obsolete. But the reality is, it's not generally, until we started doing this work and getting people involved, it's becoming more the norm now, and it should be the norm. Everybody should be walking around and like, oh man, I left my gun in the house. Let me go back and get it. It should be as normal as a cell phone.
Everybody?
Everybody. There's at least 100 million gun owners that we are aware of. Those are rookie numbers.
There are a record high number of gun sales right now among Black Americans. According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, in the first quarter of last year, 90% of gun retailers reported